Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Handbags, Manbags, Bumbags podcast. This week we bring you episode number 23, and this week we are taking another footballing episode. Specifically, we're going to be previewing the upcoming week's playoff games. Now, we're going to be previewing both the Championship, League One and League Two. We're going to be giving a bit of statistics behind it, God help us. But we're going to be doing our best. We're going to be deciding who we think will go up, who we'd like to go up, and just gloss over how each team has done each in this season. So we'll start off with the Championship. So obviously, for those that may not be aware, the two Championship semi-finals are Swansea versus Barnsley and Bournemouth versus Brentford. And they both kick off today as this is going out. So the first leg is Barnsley versus Swansea at home and Bournemouth versus Brentford. And there will be supporters in the ground, which is excellent to see. Just one thing before we start, congratulations to Leicester City for winning their first ever FA Cup title. Yuri Tillemans with an absolute screamer at Wembley in front of about 23,000 supporters, which we absolutely love to see. But anyway, let's dive in with the Championship preview to start with. And we'll start with arguably the biggest shock of this season, which is Barnsley. Now, if you'd have said to me that Barnsley had got in the playoffs at the start of the season, I'd have been having you on. Because the reality is they would have been fighting for relegation again. Because last season, they survived on the final day of the season by beating Brentford. I mean, could that be an omen for this season? That the fact that they've beaten Brentford before? Who knows? But for me, if we're talking stats driven, it doesn't look good for Barnsley. Let's just be honest. Their head-to-head record against Swansea. Swansea have beaten them they haven't lost to them since 2006. Yeah. I mean, it's not a great omen for Barnsley, but they've been the surprise package of this season. Nobody would have thought that they got anywhere near the playoffs, never mind in them. And who knows, could they go all the way to the Premier League? What are your two thoughts on that?
It'd be nice to see, definitely. Like you say, the far they've come. Like, I think it was last season they beat Nottingham Forest and Brentford in the last two games. Obviously, Forest at the time were in the playoffs before they dropped out on the final day, and obviously Brentford were incredibly close to automatic. So stayed up by the skin of their teeth with two really good performances, and then everyone would have thought they were going to be down there again. So to be in the playoffs, whether I would like to see them go all the way, whether they will or not, I think it's probably a different question. Like you say, the record against Swansea is not good. Swansea beat them 2-0 both times this season, so they'll be looking for a three-peat there. But Barnsley's home form is decent, to be fair.
It is decent. And the thing is with Barnsley, they've got a sort of Huddersfield kind of vibe to it. They're kind of an under-the-radar side that are just doing an absolutely incredible job. I mean, they've got some big notable players. The thing is with Barnsley, they've got quite a young squad as well. I think the average age of their squad is something around 23, 24, which is a good omen for the future. And they're players that they've either promoted through the ranks or have utilised the loan system well. Yeah. I mean, they brought in Daryl Dike from Orlando City on loan. No one would have ever heard of him, and he's been smashing in the Championship.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cauley Woodrow, who flopped at Fulham and has come of age at Barnsley in a way. Connor Chaplin as well. They've got great attacking options, and then I don't know about
defence as well.
Defensively, they're pretty sound as well. I mean,
Heelick and Anderson are centre-back pair, and they've been brilliant all season.
To be fair, you've got Cauley Woodrow, who is their top goal scorer this season. You know, they come from relegation scrap to the playoffs. Don't count them out. Oh, yes, as Rob said, Swansea have done the double over them, but look at Chelsea yesterday. They were clear favourites on paper. And, you know, they got caught out by a wonder strike by Tillemans. So, you know, on the day, it's whoever plays the best. And although Swansea have done the double over them, they may not be the better team on come tomorrow night.
Absolutely. That's the magic of the playoffs, because we've seen many major playoff games over the years. Most notably for me is Watford versus Leicester. I mean, that's probably single-handedly goes down as the greatest playoff game of all time.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
And it's got, there'll be fans in, which is fantastic, and it will provide the extra boost that these clubs need to push forward. But in terms of Barnsley, in terms, if we're talking statistics, they've conceded the most out of all of the teams in this season's playoffs in the Championship, which...
That's not a good omen when you've got the likes of Andre Ayew up front for Swansea.
But then again,
16 goals this season.
But then again, Swansea have scored the least out of this season's playoff teams. So I have a feeling it could well be a low-scoring encounter. There might well be only one goal in it over the two legs.
That's a good shout, to be fair. That's a very good shout. a goal either way could nick it.
Absolutely. I think it'll be 2-1, but the question is, who will it be 2-1 to? As much as I would love Barnsley to go up, because haven't been in the Premier League since 92. I mean, it's about time they've come back into the league. They've been up and down. They've been back into League One, and they've come back up, faced almost relegation, and they've built a solid team under Valérien Ismail, who no one would have heard of again, and he's come from nowhere. But for me, I think it'll be just a step too far for Barnsley, and I fancy Swansea.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think Barnsley. I think both teams will win their home legs. I think, but I would back Swansea to reach the final.
Yeah, I'd be favouring Swansea in this scenario because, like John said, they've got players like Andre Ayew who have been doing it all season long. They've got Freddie Woodman in goal on loan from Newcastle, who's been smashing it all season. They've got Conor Hourihane on loan from Aston Villa, who's been smashing it in the midfield for them and has really solidified them.
Yeah.
But
I have to back Swansea because I've been saying for a couple of weeks now that Swansea my tip to win the playoffs. So I can't then turn around and say Barnsley as soon as the camera comes on.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair enough. And I would also say Swansea, and I'm thinking 2-1 over the respective legs. I think in total, I think Barnsley win the first leg 1-0 and then Swansea win the second leg 2-0. That's my pick. Or one of them will be a draw because there's no away goals in the Championship or in any of the playoffs. So it's going to come down. It may well go to extra time. And I think out of either of the Championship ties, this one's the more likely one to go to extra time, in my personal opinion. Which we'd like to see.
It is well matched, definitely. But I think Swansea will just have enough. Although, like you say, Barnsley is definitely a long-term project there. There's a very young squad.
Absolutely.
I won't be surprised if a couple of years' time we'll be seeing them in the Premier League.
Yeah, and it would be nice to see them because, like I said earlier, they've got a sort of Huddersfield sort of vibe to them, effectively. Yeah. But let's move on to the other game that's the later kickoff in going on today as this is going out, but tomorrow as we're recording this. And it's Bournemouth at home to Brentford. And the only way I can see Bournemouth winning this is if they show up in attack.
Yeah.
Because Brentford, the top scoring side in this season's playoffs, I believe. Yes, they are.
Yeah, Ivan Toney's got 31 goals, which is more than half of what Brentford's top goal scorer, Bournemouth's top goal scorer got in Dominic Solanke. He's only got 15.
Yeah, and Ivan Toney has broken the Championship goal scoring record this season.
He's just been on fire.
He has been on fire. And if for any reason Brentford do go up, he will be snapped up by the Premier League side. And the likelihood teams for me that he would go to, I'd be tempted to say West Ham, possibly, staying in London. Or I could possibly see him as a long-term replacement for Jamie Vardy at Leicester.
I have in my own personal opinion, I reckon he'll stay at Brentford if they go up. If he don't, then he'll get snapped up by the Premier League teams.
Yeah, absolutely. If Brentford go up, he'll stay at Brentford because he'll want to prove himself in the Premier League. But if they don't go up, he has to go into the Premier League because he's too good for the Championship, judging by the fact that he's broken the Championship goal scoring record.
It's another Ollie Watkins situation, isn't it? If Brentford had gone up last year, we probably would have seen him stay there. And obviously they did Fulham beat them and he ended up at Villa and he's had a brilliant season.
Yeah, absolutely.
The key thing is with Brentford this time round, they can't go into it thinking about last year's game.
No.
Against Fulham. They can't do that. There's players on their mind. They ain't going to be at their best if they get to the playoff final. But Brentford are my tip for the playoffs.
Well, I think Brentford's issue... Sorry, you go.
On paper, I think Brentford have got the strongest squad out of all the four Championship sides. I mean, you've got defensively solid players. You've got Brian Mbeumo, who was tipped for a Premier League move as well.
Yeah.
During his time. He's not featured as much this season, but believe you me, he's still effective on his day. And only recently, Brentford have gone and beaten Bournemouth at Dean Court.
Yep.
And Brian Mbeumo Brentford went down to 10 men in that game and absolutely dominated the game. Not possession, but 18 shots to 4 with 10 men. Is that a good omen for Brentford?
To be fair, speaking of Bournemouth, they're not coming into the playoffs in good form. They've lost the last of the 3 games they've played.
Yeah, and they lost their last home game on the final day of the season at home to Stoke. So they're not coming into it in great form.
I think the key with Brentford is obviously on paper they should walk this tie. Obviously, like you said, bring in form, quality of squad. But what I thought the key with Brentford was last year in the playoff final is the cliche of playing the occasion and not the game. And we'll see if they're guilty of that again here, because they might come in and play and like feel the pressure of it being the playoffs in a game what they should. If they met in the league, they'd easily win this given the form difference. Yeah,
well, Brentford looked very shaky last season when in their 2 semi-finals against Swansea.
Yeah.
And are they going to... Well, I think they'll get through the semi-finals, but if they face Swansea in the final, that could be a very tough game for Brentford, because that's my pick for the final. Brentford is my final. And I think they are the best the best of the rest, really, because Watford and Norwich have dominated the Championship this season. But for me, I would like to see Brentford come in the Premier League, but then again, I wouldn't mind Swansea coming back up.
No,
it's one of those.
It's a written in the stars moment for Brentford. Brand new stadium. Imagine first game of the season in the Premier League for the very first time. Brand new stadium and it packed to the rafters with fans. What an atmosphere that would be.
It would be a good atmosphere, but it's the magic of the playoffs and anything could be thrown up.
No, anything is possible. Yeah, you see the playoff final a few years ago when Huddersfield went up. You know what I mean?
Christopher Schindler on penalty. Yeah. Christopher Schindler scoring the winning penalty.
Anything's possible.
Bobby Zamora's goal for QPR against Derby in 2013 in the 90th minute. Dean Windas's stunning strike for Hull. Wade Elliott's stunning strike for Burnley. I mean, and Ricardo Vaz-Tay for West Ham against Blackpool in the final. Late winners. That is the magic of the Championship playoff final. And that's why I think that it'll be a tie, and I think it will be a late goal that wins it. Quite possible. It'll be written in the stars for Ivan Toney to win it, really.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, a £10 million... I think he was Brentford's record signing at £10 million. And if for any reason Brentford don't go up, I'd say he's going to cost more than Ollie Watkins was sold for. Because Villa bought Watkins for 33 million. I can see Toney going for more than that. He's been more prolific than Watkins, and all round he's a better player than Watkins, really, during his time at Brentford. But it'll be interesting to see.
He looks completely unfazed by the step up as well. He's just people forget that he was in League One last season. He stepped up a league and his numbers have improved.
I'm just looking on flash scores at his transfers. Newcastle must be kicking themselves because he went from Newcastle to Peterborough.
Yeah.
Then Peterborough to Brentford.
Yeah, but that's the problem with academies. You see players that haven't managed to cut it at the bigger sides.
And then they blossom lower leagues down and then just, improve. Yeah.
I can think of many examples. Well, not one that springs to mind for me was Dwight McNeil. Came through Manchester United Academy, left the United Academy, came to Burnley, and now he's thriving at Burnley. But that's just me from a personal point of view. But no, in terms of the Championship, Brentford for me, and I think the final will be 1-0. I think it'll be that close.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely close final.
In the semi-finals last year between Swansea and Bournemouth, there wasn't really much. Swansea and Brentford, should I say? There wasn't really much in it, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it was really tight, and it got quite feisty actually. The Brentford versus Swansea games last year in the playoffs. I'm just going to have a look now at the records that Brentford have got against Swansea and vice versa. It's very mixed, to be fair. Very mixed. So, who knows? Brentford haven't lost to Swansea in their last 3, but it's going to be tight. Let's just put it that way. But for me, it's Brentford to go into the Premier League. And if they do get into the Premier League, I can see them staying there.
Yeah.
Not quite to Leeds' extent, but I
No.
can stay in there. So
I think so. I'll stick with Swansea. I've been saying it for about 2 weeks now. So
I've said Brentford from the start. I just want them because they've been knocking on the door in the
They
Championship playoffs for a few years, a good few years. You know.
no, I'm going to say Brentford, but I know it will be a tough final and very close. So let's dive into League One then. And the two playoff semi-finals in this league are Oxford against Blackpool, and we've got Lincoln versus Sunderland. And this could go either way as well because they're four very evenly matched sides.
Mm.
So the first game to take place, I believe, is the Lincoln game. Don't quote me on that, but
It's Blackpool.
is it the Blackpool game?
Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Oxford snuck into the playoffs on the final day. It was in Portsmouth's hands, but they lost at home to Accrington. And Oxford are coming into it on the back of some really good form. Winning 4-0 on the final day, you can't really take much better form into a playoff semi-final. I mean, Oxford were very unlucky last time out in the playoffs. Last season, lost in the final to Wycombe, who shouldn't have been in there because of the points per game system.
yeah,
But I think Oxford know what to do. They've been there before, and I think they could be an outside bet. You see it. You do see it a lot of the times. You see teams go into the playoffs on the final day and then go on and get into the Championship.
yeah. It's not out of character. So I think it's not as likely, but if you run the percentages of what position has gone up for it, so you see the 5th and 6th teams, they're still about 1 in 5 and 1 in 5 years. It is somebody 5th or 6th that gets promoted, so you can know it's hardly unlikely.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oxford are the highest scorers out of all the 4 sides, but they're going up against a Blackpool side who have got the best defensive record out of the 4 sides. So again, it's got a similar sort of Barnsley Swansea feel to it, that one.
Yeah.
With a high scoring side
same.
going up against a good defensive side.
Both of them on brilliant form as well.
Absolutely. Blackpool
They both hit really strong form to finish the season.
Blackpool have been a surprise package again. I think they've been there or thereabouts, but they've certainly got it together at Blackpool, that's for sure.
Yes, Neil Critchley's come in and done the job there.
Place Gary Bowyer has done an absolutely fantastic job.
Brilliant to see. So I know quite a lot about Neil Critchley. Obviously used to be the Liverpool under-23s manager, and so great to see him succeed. Very tipped to eventually take over the job one day. Obviously on the way Steven Gerrard's gone at Rangers, and maybe can push slightly back down. But amazing job at Blackpool.
Absolutely, because there is some high caliber managers in those League One playoffs that have all managed in the Championship. You've got Carl Robinson in charge of MK Dons, who was in charge of MK Dons when they were in the Championship.
Yep.
Who's now in charge of Oxford, obviously. You've got Lee Johnson, who's managed Bristol City, now at Sunderland. You've got Michael Appleton, who's been at West Brom and Leicester. And then obviously Neil Critchley, who's been at Liverpool. So the experience for managers is certainly there, but
Definitely.
we've got to pick one.
I think this is. I mean, you'll probably find as you go through the podcast that our knowledge will drop the further down the leagues we go. But it seems like the obvious choice with obviously them finishing 3rd in the league. And you might say bias after what I've just said, but I'd back Blackpool here, to be honest. Some of the signings they made in the summer as well really paid off. Before the season started, you didn't know who was going to compete at the top. And then they've had slightly underwhelming seasons, but some of the signings they beat the likes of Sunderland, Portsmouth, who people expected to be up there fighting for the title. And yet the players been choosing to come to Blackpool, which is, again, more of a project feel, long-term thing, like we were saying with Barnsley there.
Yeah.
To be fair, my backing's going to be Sunderland for this one.
I think Sunderland have certainly got the biggest calibre out of all those sides, with them being former Premier League. And I think it's about time that Sunderland started to make their way back up. Because again, Sunderland is a new project under new ownership again, but Whether the new ownership will work or not is another matter, because he is the youngest owner in the EFL.
Yeah.
And is he going to have that experience around him to drive Sunderland forward? Who knows? But I want to focus a bit more on Lincoln now. And
they play Wednesday. Wednesday night they play.
They do. And Lincoln have come from the National League. They've 4 seasons ago, 16-17, Lincoln were playing in the National League. They've been on an amazing cup run, which I'm not going to mention at all, for obvious reasons. But Lincoln have just been a dominant side. They've been there or thereabouts in League Two and in League One. They've had Danny Cowley as manager, who knew the club, and now they've got Michael Appleton in charge. And I don't know about Lincoln. I think they could be an outside bet, you know.
I'd agree. I wouldn't, definitely not the favourites, but dark horse is the phrase that comes to mind.
Well, they're not coming into the tie with good form as of such.
Neither side are really. Sunderland and Lincoln. Sunderland have had really bad fall off at the end of the season.
You could say Lincoln are the same aspects as Barnsley, like they're the outsiders who could actually go all the way.
Well, it's funny enough because Blackpool and Oxford come into it in the best form. Yes, Blackpool lost the season, but oh no, that's not true. No, sorry, my apologies, that's not right. No, Blackpool are coming into it in amazing form. They've won the last 4, so they're coming into it in the best form. Oxford have won the last 3. Lincoln haven't won in the last 3, and it's interesting to be fair. But Lincoln have certainly invested.
Sunderland won 2 of their last 10 coming into this.
Yeah, Lincoln have certainly invested well. I think one player that stands out to me is Brennan Johnson on loan from Nottingham Forest. I mean, season he's had, he's been tipped with a move to the Premier League. He's been that good. But I don't know with Lincoln. It's going to be an interesting one because I think that will be closer than Blackpool Oxford. Because I think they're 2 very even. Sunderland and Lincoln, judging by the fact they finished on the same number of points this season.
Yeah. So I think for me, despite form, the dip in form at the end of the season for Sunderland, obviously they might have been feeling they could have been fighting for probably perhaps not automatics of how Peterborough and Hull have stormed the league, but they definitely should have been higher than 5th. They'll be feeling.
Yeah.
But I think the experience of Sunderland, obviously, with some of the last couple of years, that compared to Lincoln, I think that will see Sunderland through for me.
You see, I'm not so sure. I think Lincoln could spring off a bit of a surprise there. I think they could well get to the playoff final. But bearing in mind, Sunderland have already beaten Lincoln in the Papa John's Trophy this season at the semi-final stage on penalties. And Sunderland then went and lost in the final, I believe. Or was it? I can't remember. I think no. We'll leave that one out. But anyways, it's going to be interesting. Let's just put it that way. My tip for the final will be Blackpool versus Lincoln, personally.
I can't argue too much with that, to be honest, because I find this one. I think of all 6 ties, I think Lincoln Sunderland for me is the hardest one to call. But
I could go either way.
Sunderland won the proper John's Trophy.
They did. They beat. I know they were playing Tranmere in the final.
Yeah, they beat them 1-0.
1-0. Right.
Yeah, I think I'd go with a Blackpool Sunderland final with Blackpool to make it back to the Championship.
I'd like to see either of them back in there because obviously they're both former Premier League sides, and the fact that they're languishing in the bottom 2 leagues, like the League One, they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be.
At the end of the day, I wouldn't mind seeing any of those 4 come up. I'd like to can give it a go, like Luton have, because Luton again, they've played in the National League. It's a similar sort of vibe to Lincoln. They've been in the National League, they've been through the divisions, and now they're in the Championship and they're established Championship side.
To be honest, all of these really, the only one out of all the teams, the 12 teams involved, the only one I kind of would wouldn't really like to see get promoted. There's nothing against the club. It would just be Bournemouth. Just it's a bit boring to see the same 3 clubs come back up that went down. Other than that, any of the other sides have no issues whatsoever. There's nothing against Bournemouth. It's just boring, isn't it? If 3 sides come down and come back up the next year, there's no need of fresh face in the Premier League.
I mean, out of the League One sides, Lincoln have got the worst goal difference out of all the teams in the playoff. But that being said, I think they will be the outside bet to go up. And that's why I'm going to predict Lincoln. Just as a bit of an outside bet. I think it'll be Lincoln Blackpool in the final, but I'm going to say Lincoln.
I'm going to go for a Sunderland Blackpool final. And I'll be happy with either one of them going up.
I wouldn't mind either one of the up. But no, Lincoln for me. I think John said Sunderland. Did you say Blackpool, Rob, or did you say Sunderland? Yeah. So 3 different sides. Sorry, Oxford, but if Jake was on, he might have said Oxford, but never mind. Let's move into League 2 then. And the playoff ties in this division are Tranmere against Morecambe and Forest Green Rovers against Newport County.
Yeah, it's a different one, this one. Newport Forest Green play on Tuesday, right after Blackpool, Oxford, and then Tranmere and Morecambe play on a Thursday.
Yeah, and I want to start with Morecambe because they've completely turned it around. Every single season that I've been having a sneak peek at League 2, they've been right above the bottom 2. So effectively, they've done a Barnsley.
Yeah,
they've been there or thereabouts at the bottom of League 2 for the past 3 or 4 seasons now. And the only reason they didn't go up automatically is because Bolton and Cambridge both won.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of like a Brentford in the Championship. They've been knocking on the door, haven't they?
They have. And Morecambe, they've certainly been one of the surprise packages, really, this season, for obvious reasons. But this is the problem now. We're getting to that stage where we don't really know much about League 2. Yeah, because last season, Morecambe finished 22nd. And that was just above the relegation zone. The season before that, they finished 18th. And then the season before that, they finished 22nd. And now they're 4th. That's
so
some turnaround.
Right turnaround in future. Yeah, they had a right turnaround in fortune, haven't they?
They have. And it was quite comical, really, because Newport striker Kevin Ellison, former Morecambe player, scored against Morecambe in the league game.
I remember this.
And went up and celebrated in the faces of the management staff, which was quite funny.
Yeah, he said a lot of explicit language to Derek Adams for not starting him and making him train with the under-18s.
Yeah.
So, but no, good for him because, like, you know, it's a one-up on the manager. It's like, you got rid of me because you thought I weren't good enough. Have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have nothing wrong with what he did. It's proving a point.
No, absolutely. The difficult thing with League 2 is we don't know much. I mean, the only thing I know about Newport County is they've been doing it year in, year out in the FA Cup. They seem to always get to about the 4th or 5th round, knocking out Premier League sides or major championship sides in the past, most notably Leicester Leeds. And they pushed Tottenham quite far as well one year. But for me, I don't know. It's Tranmere have been to Wembley and know Wembley, so they could be an outside bet, and it would be an automatic bounce back for Tranmere if they were to go up after being relegated from League 1 last year.
Well, obviously Tranmere have done it before as well because they got their back-to-back. They got back-to-back promotions, didn't they, to get to League 1 in the first place? So,
yeah, absolutely. But Forest Green's obviously the vegan club. Played in the Cotswolds. They're certainly a team on the rise. There's no question about that. But this is going to be it's going to be a stab in the dark prediction. This for League 2. For me,
Morecambe are coming in on the best form out of anybody by quite some margin.
I'll make an early prediction. I'll say Forest Green Tranmere final. There we go.
Forest Green versus Tranmere.
Mhm.
You see, I would also say Forest Green versus Tranmere, judging by the fact that Morecambe may well choke because they've not been in this situation before.
Yeah.
Newport, Forest Green, and Tranmere have all been in playoffs before.
Mhm.
Morecambe haven't.
Yeah, Morecambe are coming in from back-to-back relegation scraps into a completely unknown environment. You know what I mean?
Well, last season League Two was curtailed, so they didn't finish the season, but
No, yeah.
they've been there or thereabouts at the bottom of the table, and suddenly they're now back on the rise. I think it'll be too much for Morecambe this year, personally, and I'm going to say Forest Green to go up this year. I think.
Yeah, it's a really well-run club.
It is a well-run club. It is an eco club.
Yeah.
Owned by Dale Vince. But no, I think Forest Green's certainly a club on the rise. They're certainly a new project. Only recently got into the Football League. Only over the last 3 or 4 seasons, I think they've been back in the Football League.
It's the way that the club's being run and the way that the project is and the elements of the project that they're doing. It's different to what everyone else is doing. And that's why I have a fondness for Forest Green, because they're doing everything differently to everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say Forest Green to go up. I mean, there's no stats driven at all for it, other than the fact that Newport,
Not enough of preference.
Forest Green are unbeaten against Newport this season, if that's any moment to go by. They drew at home and then beat Newport away. And then for the other game, Tranmere, it's one apiece for Tranmere and Morecambe this season, both winning away games by 1-0. So,
as you said, Tranmere went down the season before. I mean, I'd like to see Tranmere go back up.
They're a yo-yo club, really, Tranmere.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to see. Well, sorry, I wouldn't like to see him go back up. I'd like to see him reach the final. You know.
Yeah, but
So
if they do get to the
go up
final, are they going to choke at Wembley again? Because they've already been at Wembley once this season in the Papa John's Trophy final.
Yeah.
Although Sunderland are a good outfit and there's 1-0 to them.
Mm.
But are they going to choke at Wembley?
And plus, they were playing against a team that was a league above them.
Yeah, absolutely. But out of anyone, Morecambe and Newport come into the best form. But for me, I reckon it'll be the winner of the Newport Forest Green game that wins the playoffs in League Two. And for me, it will be Forest Green.
Same. Forest Green for me.
I'd say the opposite, to be honest. I think I'd go for a Tranmere Newport final with Tranmere to get over the line just purely through experience at Wembley.
Well, there we go. Very mixed predictions. I mean, we're no EFL experts, judging by the fact that we all support Premier League clubs. But we've given it a go. We've deciphered what we think is going to be the playoff finals and how we think each playoff game is going to go. There's no guarantee that anything's going to happen because nothing we ever predict is ever right. But we'll see. We shall see. So the playoffs, the first legs start this week, Monday through to Friday. And then the second legs start on Friday through to about next Tuesday, I think, with the finals in the final week in May. So we shall see. And the magic of the playoffs will still live on even through COVID times. But for now, I think that does draw this episode to an end. Not a very long one because we don't know anything about EFL clubs and we can't really go into much depth. But stay tuned for more information about various things going on the podcast. And we will keep bringing new content to you. So for now, it's take care and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.